Sorry, I'm late. Well, we started like 6 minutes late this morning. It wasn't the producer's fault today. It was me and Ass.
Yeah.
We arrived like a little bit late, and I don't know about you, but I really struggled to get out of bed this morning.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it is
was a
freezing.
struggle. And also things take a little bit longer the older you get.
I don't know if it's that. Hey, I mean, it's just as quick. Listen, as long as I don't have to. And I know girls have to faff. They have to do like makeup and they have to get their hair right. And I mean, I just think about you've got earrings, which I never have to worry about.
Makeup.
You know? Yeah,
Look,
all
I
that
didn't
sort of
bother
shit.
with the hair this morning.
Oh, but I mean,
But
that still takes effort.
For that.
That still takes effort.
No, exactly.
Huh? Yeah, so
but
how was your weekend?
It was good. Went out for lunch with the family, which was nice. We're slipping into a habit of doing that every Sunday.
Yeah, but Sundays are kind of, like, I don't really like doing too much stuff on a Sunday. And the only exception to doing absolutely zero is family stuff, lunches, whatever. But it's never early in the morning and it's never late at night on a Sunday.
No.
It's almost as if the night creeps in on both sides of that. You sleep late on a Sunday morning, no matter what, and you absolutely get into bed early on a Sunday night. That's kind of my dreary routine. Anyway, I hope you had a more fun weekend than by the sound of Leigh-Ann and mine. And let's see what we've got going on here. Lots of people busy in the comments already. Apparently, listen to this. I'm watching a documentary where they say piracy is making a return. This is Bitcoin Boot. Bitch never stopped. I downloaded about 20 books on sourdough a month ago. Okay, so are we talking about pirates as in ARG? Like guys on ships who
Like
are...
the Somalian
that's a thing,
type thing, yeah.
And there's that, and then there's, of course, the piracy that's going on online.
And then how does that connect to the sourdough books? That was my next question.
Well, maybe it's books about making sourdough.
Sourdough pirates?
Books on sourdough. No. So he's downloading actual PDFs.
Oh, the piracy. Okay.
So
Online
piracy as in stealing other people's stuff or stuff that you're supposed to pay for. I just think when it comes to watching a movie once or a TV series once or whatever, I know that there's a huge amount of work that's gone into that. I know that it's the intellectual property of someone else. I get that, right? And I in ordinary circumstances, I'm absolutely pro whatever kind of property rights people can bring to bear. But I think if you watch something once, you shouldn't have to pay an extortionate amount of money for it. And I think that what happened was, I mean, you remember when we used to buy music, okay? And that's one of the reasons this show's for free. We don't charge people a subscription, and I know lots of podcasts are doing that. And maybe we should have. Some people would argue that would have been the smarter economic move. But I just think, if you're going to be listening to our show and you support us the way that you do, and when we bring clients and partners on to do stuff with us, the audience supports us. They get that we have to make money to make the podcast. But I don't want to charge people for the podcast. Do you know what I mean? So if you're going to watch a TV series or something, and you're going to watch it once, and you're going to access it through one of these expensive subscriptions that people have in place, good. You're supporting the content business. You're helping to make that series. You're helping to make movies like that. But I don't see a future for it, because that attitude is very few and far between. Most people are like, oh, please, if I can get it here, I'll get it. And I've done that too, right? Like if I want to watch an older movie that I'm not going to be able to find on one of these channels, then I'll download it illegally. And then I'll watch it, and then I'll delete it. It's not like I'm keeping it and making money
like
for
you're
myself.
selling it to
It's not
other
like
people.
I'm unselling it to somebody. But I don't know. It's such a messy minefield, this, because there's no real solid answer. I mean, there is in terms of the law. You're obviously guilty of piracy. But
You go to jail for that?
Well, I don't know. If anyone says that I should be punished for downloading music or a movie or a TV series, I'll just take them and show them the tens of thousands of rands I've spent on CDs and DVDs over the years. And I'll be like, okay, so, you can have a go and you can say I'm a terrible person and I steal, but look at all this that I've bought that just sits there gathering dust now. I mean, I don't know about you, I don't have a CD player or DVD player.
No. Have you
Do
still
you?
got your CDs?
Yeah, tons of them.
I've got a CD player in my car still. But I'm not
Do you-
sitting listening.
Do you ever think about the fact that when we were buying music, if you bought one of those double albums, like I remember the most expensive one was like Michael Jackson's History,
Yes.
which had this pamphlet in it, and there were like photographs and there were lyrics and there were 2 CDs, and the
Beautiful artwork.
the CDs were like laser, there were
Yes.
kind of almost like 3D images on them. And I remember that cost me 350 Rand for that album. And that was a long time ago. So that money is worth, in 200 Rand in those days' time, or 300 Rand in those days' time, is now probably 1,000 Rand.
Yeah.
So if I look at this massive collection of CDs I've got, I must have spent, it could even be hundreds of thousands.
I was going to say it's more
right?
hundreds. Yeah.
So then if I've done that, do I need to feel bad about the fucking TV series that I'm only going to watch once that I downloaded last week? Really? Really? Is that worth like going after someone for? I don't know. What do you guys do? You steal everything, James? Oh, really? You stream. Flex, you steal? There's Flex stealing, as usual. Ass, you steal?
I used to
You're such a goody
music,
two-shoes.
but no, I
though.
am too. I am. a
Yeah,
goody
I mean, you still
two-shoes.
got your E-tag, haven't you?
No, I think I've taken that off now.
Leigh-Ann had an she was the only person I knew who had an ETOL E-tag.
I paid my TV license for the last time the other day, even though I don't watch TV, and now I'm in the cancellation process.
Okay.
But no, I subscribe to a few channels, but then also I use other people's passwords, which is
Can you cancel your TV license?
yes,
Okay, so what do you say, that you don't have a TV anymore?
yeah. I don't know if they send someone over to check, but I'd best move mine before I do. I
No,
don't
'cause,
watch.
mean, and they
both.
could come and look at mine, and they could just like dust it off.
Yeah,
and they would
exactly.
know for a fact that I'm not watching TV.
Exactly.
All right, so let's take a look at what's going on here. Thanks for that little diversion into the world of piracy. Carlos Santos says, I just moved my folks out of their house. They've been there for 45 years. Threw out a fax machine, 2 CD players, 2 DVD machines, and a Walkman. But the CD Walkman, you remember those?
Yes.
And loads of premenopause tampons.
Oh my God. Wow. Yeah. Look, cleaning out my parents' house. They lived there for 22 years, and after my dad passed,
Stuff.
He was such a hoarder, a neat hoarder
Stuff.
of things that he might fix.
Yeah.
We found 50 used toothbrushes.
Really?
For cleaning bikes and cleaning.
How many?
50.
Jesus. Wow.
How many do you need?
Well, I think I'm going to get home after that and just throw away all my old toothbrushes. I'd be terrified that someone will come and go, why are there so many old toothbrushes lying around? Oh, useful for cleaning. Strayamate says, sorry for being negative, which is a great way to start a sentence, by the way. But just an interesting stat for all. Did you know that the most suicides occur on a Monday worldwide? I can fully relate because I usually feel super suicidal on Mondays myself. I think it's maybe that dread of going back to work for some people who really hate their jobs. And also the end of the weekend, and it's the middle of winter. Americans have that, what do they call it? Black Monday or Blue Monday or whatever. Black Friday is the one with the buying stuff, right?
Yes, no,
okay,
not
so that's
that one.
fine.
It might be blue.
It could be Blue Monday. But that's the first Monday. It's in the middle of the Northern Hemisphere winter. And it's the first day back at school and back at work. And apparently that's the absolute depth of despair for most people. So I suppose ours would probably be around now.
Yeah.
Either last Monday or this Monday. But you'll be fine. Don't do anything stupid. You'll be all right.
Nothing lasts forever.
Yeah. Well, okay. Thanks for that very positive thing. You mean
No.
not the bad feelings?
The bad feelings
Okay.
don't last forever.
Okay. I take it back. Sorry.
But neither do
Thought you were
people.
like, well, neither do people. Yeah. Oh, my God. I only steal if I cannot get the content legally, says Carl. Like if it's on Netflix or Apple or Showmax. If it's not on there, then he'll obviously get it illegally. We use fax machines, says Christian. We still use them. It's more
Still.
secure than email.
Oh, that's true.
Daylight saving causes a lot of heart attacks, according to him too.
Sure.
I don't know how that works. I mean, maybe because people, they don't set their clock back or forward, and then they get the time wrong, so they miss meetings or they're
Shock
late
of
for
their
work
lives
or
and have a heart attack.
I mean, that's a really stupid reason to have a heart attack. Oh, daylight savings time! I can feel my heart's going to explode. All right. Reminds me of the Boomtown Rats song, I Don't Like Mondays. What a great song. Dying of heat on this side, says Elizabeth. Where the hell are you that you're dying of heat? I did see that the English are having a very hot time at the moment.
Yes.
You know, for them, anything
and
over...
they moan about everything.
Oh, my God.
Too.
Anything over 30, they're like, oh, so bloody hot. I feel like in Benidorm, I am.
Yeah.
Hey, look, come on.
There's one woman I follow, and she's quite crude, but she's great. She lives
yeah.
in London. And she's off to lunch to go and meet friends, but she has to take the tube.
Yeah.
She's deciding what to wear, and she's like, but the heat, me minge flaps are sticking everywhere. And she's showing these dresses that give her
God.
ventilation.
Me minge flaps. Oh, Jesus. No, this weekend was okay, but this morning I just suddenly thought, fuck, it's suddenly cold. You know, my car gives me a little warning if it's under, I think it's under 3 degrees or something.
Yeah.
We haven't hit
To
the...
like put the snow
Yeah, the
chains
little
on.
snow thing. Well, yeah, but the little snow symbol comes up and everything. I haven't hit the minuses yet. I don't know about you.
Oh.
Have you?
My car doesn't give me the temperature.
Oh, okay. Your car just basically, you're just grateful it stays together.
Yeah.
You're just grateful it can get you to work.
Yeah, I mean, I have to use a gas heater in it. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I don't know if it's accurate or not because there was frost all over the thing this morning, and you know when your car is covered in like a layer of ice, especially if it's on the windscreen, it's kind of a pain. It's a big problem.
I haven't had that in a long time, and I park outside.
Yeah, I park outside too.
But I remember growing up when I had my first car, I always had to get out of not a kettle, but room temperature water.
Yeah, and then pour that on the
Haven't had that in
windscreen.
ages.
Well, let's not ask for it because we
No.
don't want it. Thank you. All right, 35 out in California. Okay, is that where you are, Christian? You're in California. Gareth, what do you think about all the GNU politics, all fart and no poo from the DA? Well, I'm so embarrassed. I put out a tweet saying South African politics is so uninteresting, but I left off the N on South African. So I basically said South Africa politics is so uninteresting. So I sounded really stupid. But I think anyone reading it will know that was unintentional.
I would have deleted it.
Yeah, it's so embarrassing to have a grammar or spelling error, right?
Yeah.
I did it a while ago with another one, and then I suddenly saw, but you only see after. Maybe later that day or whatever. You know.
Yeah.
I don't read the comments, so I don't know. But then I saw it and I was so embarrassed. But that's my point, is South African politics at the moment, it's just so dull. It's so childish. You know, you're going to hear from people who have old grudges that the rest of us don't care about. I kind of just wish this GNU would not work. And I know that that's a controversial thing to say because some people are very attached to the idea. They're like, oh, but then we're going to get back to a stage where the ANC does everything it wants. They can't. They don't have a majority. They cannot form a government on their own. They'll have to pick up the rats and mice parties and do stuff with them. You got Gatens shouting and screaming about stuff. You've got Herman Mashaba shouting and screaming about stuff. You've got Helen Ziller saying, oh, this is a red line and we're not going to cross it. I don't know. I really feel all of that is just theatrics.
Yeah.
The people of this country we are not impressed by you politicians. When will you guys realize that the people of South Africa are just so bored with you? I think we are just bored. So the same fucking people who've been involved in politics for the last 30 years, they all just cuck at it. It's so uninspiring. We've got serious problems we wish would be addressed. And instead of that, they're all like power jockeying and looking for a quick fix to some very, very serious problems you can't just put a Band-Aid over.
Yeah.
Clearly, economic growth is not a big thing. They're hypocrites. I mean, this president of ours, he fired some deputy minister who's in the DA, right? This is what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, because you guys maybe know more than I do. I didn't watch any of it over the weekend as it unfolded. But there's such hypocrisy there. I mean, he's got people in his cabinet, ANC people, that Cyril Ramaphosa could fire for a number of reasons, multitudes of reasons. I mean, Angie Motshekga in defense has basically been the worst defense minister we've ever had. You know, we lost those people in the Congo. We couldn't even evacuate people in the Congo. I don't know that we have one working airplane in the Air Force at the moment. Again, I stand to be corrected. If you know more than I do, please let us know. But that should... How can you call yourself, in all honesty and seriousness, a Minister of Defense when you have an Air Force without a working plane?
It's literally your only job.
I mean, I think Lesotho have a better Air Force than we do at the moment.
Yeah.
And Lesotho's the size of my fucking pantry. Lesotho, great country, Lesotho. I don't even know where the hell that is. It's not a... I mean, here we've got the US that take B-2B bombers and fly them for 40 kilometers without refueling them and drop a 30-ton bunker buster bomb into Fordo in Iran, and it all goes swimmingly. And then they've got these unbelievably skilled pilots and military strategists and like people who are figuring out the plan and how it's going to work. And what do we have? We like Angie with her finger up her nose and sitting in a study at home,
Yeah.
running the Air Force, which has like a paper jet. Like, what is that? I mean, and then he fires this guy. Apparently, part of it, I don't know again, because I didn't pay that much attention. Part of it is that there's huge embarrassment at the moment because Paul Mashatile, the deputy president, his wife is apparently like knee deep in the lottery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
And the
she's
involvement of
linked.
the running it.
She's linked very directly to the company that's just been given the tender to run the lottery, which to me is just such obvious corruption. You know how many people they play that lottery? I mean, there was a time where I used to play it too. You just really hope you win because you need a solution to problems, and financially you just look at it and go, well, I can't work my way out of this. I'm going to take a shot at the lottery. And now, if you take a look at the lottery and it's run by all these crooked people, I mean, you might as well just write a check. You might as well just give the money you would have given to the lottery hoping to win. You might as well just give that to the Mashatiles, you know? And so the president's got real problems. And he couldn't give us an explanation for why he fired this minister.
It also brought up the question I saw was, do we even need deputy ministers?
Oh, God.
Which,
we don't.
no, we don't really. I mean, how many days are you not going to be able to do your job a year? And surely you do have a team around you anyway. I don't know.
Well, Kevin says, start a libertarian economy first focused young party, and we need a Javier Milei to avoid the socialist slide. Yeah, I just don't know that party politics as it's constituted in South Africa is going to be the way to go. I believe that we have some of the best NGO, I would say, activist groups, and by that I'm very, very
Not
specific
collectivist.
about
Yes.
which groups I'm talking about. There are guys like Sakalicha, who we had in the studio before, you know, Russell Lamberti and Pete, and the two of them are doing unbelievable work, and they are helping little towns, helping businesses, they're helping individuals to stand up to the state. Those are the kinds of things that will get us out of this, not political parties. Political parties are just always looking for your vote. So they're always going to kiss your ass, but never ever do anything for it. Jared says, changing the players won't change the game. Here in Canada, for example, we got a first-time politician as our prime minister who vowed to fix everything. Literally nothing has improved. Yeah. And Canada, listen, there's some very stupid things happening in Canada at the moment. I also want to say, because we spoke about this last week, that New York, the biggest city in America and probably the most famous city in the world, is looking likely to elect an immigrant. He was born in Uganda, I think. Muslim,
No
socialist.
way.
Socialist, who wants to have government-run grocery stores. Government-run grocery stores. Just think about that for a second. He wants to have I think it's $60 million set aside so that kids can get sex change surgery. Kids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is the guy. He thinks that it should be a sanctuary city where no illegal immigrants are sent home. What is the other thing that he wants to do? He's got a bunch of policies.
Taking him seriously.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Democrats in New York, they just love him. So I just said over the weekend, or it could have been last week already, like, woe unto New York, which used to be my favorite city in the world. Because I don't see how, if you elect someone like that, it's going to work out well for New York. I mean, it's already been backsliding under the last few mayors. And he was this guy, what is his name? Mamdani. Yeah, Zohan Mamdani. Anyway, he's been giving a bunch of interviews and everything. And my chief problem with him is not the immigrant or the Muslim part, but the socialist part and the actual policies which he's talking about. It's just crazy that someone with those ideas could be taken seriously in a city like New York. So New York's going to get what it deserves, good and hard. And I feel bad for the place because I really love that city. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But of course, you know, you express an opinion about how someone's policies are shit, or you don't like the fact that they're a socialist, and you immediately you're being called xenophobic and anti-immigrant and Islamophobic and anti-Muslim. And I just think, please, you know, those labels just don't have the strength they used to have. It's weak tea these days. You know, even calling someone racist, misogynist, Islamophobic, you kind of roll your eyes when people throw those words around at each other.
Yeah.
Because it's just become so twee. It's like, oh, that's sweet. Do you still play with your soft toys? It's not, you can't take people seriously anymore. The power of accusing someone of those things is just weak.
Yeah.
It's not so strong.
Yeah, but it's also, you can have your opinion here. I'm just surprised at New York's people that I would never have expected that they would have voted for someone like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, very surprising.
This is very much the rise of the Bernie Sanders far left in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, he's a block.
And you know what? In some ways, I suppose you got to just let people sign their own death warrant, because a city like New York, it won't take long under those policies for it to completely collapse. And you've seen it happen in American cities so far. You've seen it in Detroit. You've seen it in San Francisco. There he is, Zoran. There he is. What a guy. Cut red tape, support small businesses. He's not supporting small businesses. He also wants to raise taxes. He needs to get, I don't think it's $81 billion that he needs to raise to pay for all his social programs. So he reckons what they'll do is they will tax people who've moved out of New York State and out of New York City, but they'll carry on taxing you if you lived there somewhere in the last 5 years.
Oh, no.
Isn't that insane?
That sounds like a South African policy.
I know, and don't let them get any ideas.
Yeah.
You know, it's just madness. By the way, we don't have Dr. Hanan today. He's just too busy and important
On
for us today.
Suicide Monday. That's
I know.
a problem.
It isn't Suicide Monday. We just think it might be.
Maybe he's just really busy because of it.
Yeah. B-2 pilots flew for 36 hours straight, says Bitcoin But. That's about right. I think the planes can fly for 40 hours, but it was 36. There's a whole street of Mormon grocery stores in New York, so he can fly a kite with that idea. Meet the Zohan. Slippery Pickle says, I've had no water the whole weekend, no power half of yesterday. Thank God DSW picked up, or the government would have scored a hat trick against me. You see, that's the kind of stuff that makes me think our government's just so busy being distracted by bullshit.
The first thing I saw this morning, it's small. It's Johannesburg. It's Johannesburg's deeds office.
Yeah.
But this just shows you the level of things that are crumbling. So the deeds office has closed. I don't know if you know. And that's because the staff refused to climb the stairs.
Why? Because they're just too lazy.
The elevators are broken.
How many floors? Do we know?
I'm not quite sure. But
if it's 20
stopped.
floors, I'd be a little bit annoyed too.
Yeah, I mean, look at the SABC. We
Sure.
had 20 floors there, didn't we?
Yeah, but we never had to go to the top unless you were in serious trouble.
No, exactly.
We were too unimportant to ever go right to the top. But it was. I know that there were stages where the offices, which were on the 8th floor, we had to climb up those 8 floors
and
of stairs.
it's a lot. But
I was at the gym in Joburg here a while ago, and that's about 5 or 6 floors up. Jeez, that was the whole workout. I got to the top. I was like, well, I don't need to do this anymore.
run back down. But no, so basically what's happened is no one's working. So the office registered just 3,400 property transfers in 2025. It's this year so far, compared to 38,500 for all of 2024. So what's happening is that estate agents have now started to have to take loans because they can't pay commissions. Everything is crumbling. Estate agents are like, they're in shit.
It's a real problem.
And if you are buying or selling right now, it
Huge
could take
problem.
a year for your house to your
And can you imagine the drag
bond to
that
clear.
because most people are selling because they need the money, right?
yeah.
And a lot of people are moving, so they're going to need the money for the move.
They'll only get it in
Right.
a year's
So,
time.
I mean, that's outrageous. And again, this is a Joburg thing.
It's
So
the lifts broke down.
but this is the municipality in Joburg,
It's
right?
a small thing, but it just is a
Dada
inclination of what's
Morero,
happening.
get your act together. You are a disgrace and an embarrassment. Like, what is wrong with our leaders that they cannot do what they're elected to do? You have a job as mayor. Let's see if you can get the lifts at the deeds office working. I don't want to hear about you're going to save South Africa, you're going to get rid of every pothole, you're going to help small businesses, or say platitudes like that. Just fix the lifts at the deeds office, dude. Do that. That should be your whole plan for this Monday, the 30th of June. You should be like, I'm getting... You know how easy it would be to fix this town if you just got someone in there who was empowered enough to be able to make decisions and see them through. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he's like, he would love to be mayor. And I said to him, really? He's like, he would go down Louis Botha here in Joburg, where they've put in those stupid bus lanes.
Yeah.
And he would just bulldoze them down. He'd say on day one, get rid of all these dumb bus lanes. They've put one here on Catherine Street.
Yes, and now I can't turn right.
What a stupid...
I have to go into the bus lane, right?
What a stupid idea.
It's so stupid.
It's added traffic. It hasn't made it easier.
And where were the buses? I didn't see one.
There aren't any. So it's just dumb. And we should bulldoze these. And he said he would immediately grant like thousands of small business licenses to all the vendors and street sellers and everybody else and stop them being arrested by cops and basically extorted for money. There's so many things that could be done. And get the deeds office lifts working.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, what an embarrassment.
There are other offices as well in Joburg where it's just become a fire hazard. They haven't sorted out boxes and boxes of papers.
Look, I'm sure also there are a lot of fat, useless, lazy bureaucrats who work at the deeds office. It's probably like 2 floors, let's be fair. It might be more, and if it is more, cool. I've
Maybe
been on
I'll
your
visit.
side. I've been on your side the whole way this morning. I'm like, they must fix the lifts. But if it's 2 floors, you could drag your fat ass up 2 floors. I mean, I walk up the stairs here thanks, Leigh-Ann. There we go. Yeah, very good. I walk up 2 floors. Do you guys use the lifts or do you use the stairs? Flex? Flex, you use the stairs? Okay, both Flex and
I
James
use the
do.
lifts, but only because I've
Well,
just
you were
recently
crippled
had
just a short while.
surgery.
Yeah, I know. Okay. No good deed goes stamped.
Yeah, you see. Yeah.
Also, we buy cars are getting exposed for selling scrap cars.
Oh.
Ooh, that's scary. Imagine you buy a car and you're like, oh, this looks all right. Kick the wheels. You know how you do a quick pre-inspection. Get in. It sounds like it starts. Drive a little bit. Clank. Everything starts falling apart. And you've paid good money for that.
It makes me think of the taxi I was behind on the highway
Yeah.
towards the Rivonia off-ramp
Uh-huh.
in the fast lane, and I just heard something crash, and the whole taxi
God.
fell apart.
Oh my God.
It literally went ka-kung, ka-kung. You know that guy who was on TV
shit.
where his chair broke at the SABC?
Yeah.
It was like that. It was like wheels came off and it just went on its belly. The doors started coming off.
Dirk says there are old photos of Cape Town and Joburg with trams running. I couldn't believe my eyes that we had trams at one point. Now we don't even have streets. Yeah, you know, that's another thing. I mean, you could complain and you can compliment. And I'm always happy to give compliments when things are being done. Like when I see them tidying up the highway and, you know, cutting the grass and fixing the street signs. We've got street signs that have been, like someone obviously crashed into it like 8 years ago and it's rusted now and it's bent and gnarled. And no one's even thinking to fix that shit. We've completely lost our pride. And Joburg, whether you like it or not, and I happen to like Joburg very much, Pretoria, which I also happen to like very much, these have become shithole cities. The roads are a mess. The infrastructure's falling apart. People can't go and register properties at the deeds office. I mean, this is Banana Republic stuff. And if you think that's okay and you're willing to turn a blind eye to that stuff, you probably also live in like squalor yourself. You probably, you know, you're like rummaging for stuff around your house and you it's a mess and things are sticky and gross and dirty and your toilet's all blocked up and you're okay with that. You know, that's the kind of person you are. You're a filthy pig and you don't mind living in a filthy pig house and therefore you don't mind living in a filthy pig city. But I kind of have a problem with that.
Yeah. Especially where you see efforts like, is it on the corner of Sandton and Winnie Mandela? There used to be like a little stone and sign that had been put into the sand saying Joburg or something.
Oh, yeah.
And succulents and just a little bit of city pride.
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
I know
corner.
exactly where it is. Yeah.
And now it's like, it's just crumbling. People are walking over it. There are weeds. You can't see it anymore. Something as small as that.
Well, again, you can't talk about having human dignity. You can't expect anyone to respect you if you don't respect yourself. And the city of Joburg has no respect for itself, clearly. And it is our politicians, largely, because they're dreadful and they can't organize a piss-up in a brewery. But it's also just the people of Joburg. You see people, you know, squatting and taking a shit next to the road. And you're like, well, you know, if that's how you want to live, if that's how you think you deserve to live, then that's what you're going to get. The world is going to treat you the way that you expect to be treated. And if you expect to be treated like a homeless vagrant in a city where everything's falling apart, then that's what will happen. And I just don't know what to do about this. I saw one of the tenderpreneurs took delivery of his 6-wheel G-Wagon in Germany last week.
Oh, you see.
Yeah, you see, that's also the other thing is if you think you can hide the state of things by buying yourself material possessions that make you feel better for a short while, it doesn't, because he's still going to drive that G-Wagon on shitty roads. Yeah. You know, it's people who buy a Lamborghini or a Ferrari and they can afford it.
Point?
Again, I have no problem with that. But you're still going to have to drive it on the roads here. Mm-hmm. And these roads are cuck for that. You're going to be replacing tires the whole time. Yeah. Not worth it. Bree Street is still out of order, says Bitcoin, but system she's down. Yeah, that was the street that exploded.
Yes.
Right?
All the gas underneath.
That's so embarrassing. Oh, it's so embarrassing. It's just, we have a street that exploded and nothing's been done.
Yeah.
It's like 2 years later. And again, I do want to say this because people will find some piece of this taken out of context, but I do love Joburg. I love this place. I love the people. I love the energy. I just think we deserve a little bit better in terms of leadership, management, infrastructure, maintenance, responsibility, like personal responsibility. Is that so hard to ask?
There's an unclaimed pavement triangle near where I live.
An unclaimed pavement triangle.
You know, with grass, and it would usually, the city's not going to attend to it.
No.
And so our little 3 streets that it crosses gets together every now and then. And they'll have, instead of their gardener doing their garden, they'll donate their gardener for the day. They'll bring out their own lawnmowers. They'll bring out some new plants, do some planting. And it's the people who are trying who are the most upset by everything.
Yeah,
that's
because
going
they
on.
have they have that self-respect.
They have the pride. Yeah.
You know, if you have a little bit of value and you value yourself, then you want things around you to look valuable too and look cared for. Yeah, you can just tell, like, some people are just raised by wolves. Like, literally, they're just
not raised at all. That's
yeah,
the problem.
their whole world could be put into a black rubbish bag and just thrown onto a dumpster because it's just so worthless. And those are the kind of people who, they don't care if they... I've seen, there's this one street near me, near where I live, where someone has gone and chopped the street lights down. So all of them are like this on the ground. All of them. And I mean, you can tell those street lights were put up like in the 70s or whatever because they're old.
Yeah.
But they've been deliberately chopped. I think people may be stealing the wires or something.
Oh, yes.
But you drive along this road, maybe 20 of these street lights, all down on their side. And you think, like, really? Imagine being the person who's, I'm going to now sabotage the street lights on the street. I'm going to take down all of these street lights for copper wire, which you'll maybe get a few $1,000 for. That isn't yours, by the way. It's not like this is people starting a business. These are criminals. This is public infrastructure you should be arrested for. I mean, I think we should actually institute a law at the moment where if you destroy government property willfully and you try to steal government property and you destroy the environment, like you litter and you pour sewage directly into rivers and things, you should actually get your hands cut off for something, like something draconian and dramatic, right? Because I promise you it would stop. But there's no will to get these things sorted out. So we just carry on, like, living in a, what did I call it earlier? Filthy pig.
Yeah,
city.
in a pig's time. And then the thing is, everything's taking doubly long because of the GNU and because of the arguing and all the steps that everything now has to go through.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
So, okay, so, yeah, what do? We I suppose you just have to...
Keep on keeping on.
Okay, they cut down the street lights for tenders for new ones. Those lights are 100,000 Rand on tenders. Are they? That seems ridiculous. But these have never been replaced. I could tell you 12 years that I've been there, never been replaced. So I don't know if that's happening. I think they're just stripping it for the wires or scrap metal. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it really makes me sad because that's wanton destruction. And if we can't solve these little problems, I don't know what we will. Hey, James, do you want to come and tell us about the sport? Because we don't have Hanan today, so you may as well have his slot. Let's find out what's going on over there. And then we've also got, I'm so excited about this because we were meant to have him on a while ago, and for some reason we couldn't get the internet connection up and working. But Des Latham is going to be joining us. Des is a South African broadcaster, writer, podcast host. He's got his tremendous History of South Africa podcast, and I've watched a few episodes of that, and it's just going to be so nice for him and I to talk about history. I'm afraid Leigh-Ann's just going to have a sleep.
I'll have a lie down.
Yeah, Leigh-Ann will have a sleep, but you'll find it interesting. I mean, he does such a great show.
Yeah.
All right, James, what do you have for us? Hello, everyone. Hello, James.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good. How was your weekend?
Great. Bok rugby is back, so the vibe in South Africa is different.
So it rained in Cape Town, as Ben had warned us it might.
It's flooding in Sea Point.
I didn't watch any of it, so I have no idea who won.
54-7 is who won.
We won.
We won.
Okay, good.
Okay. Easy win for the
Yeah,
Boks.
because I know I'm going to bump into someone today and they're going to go, oh, that game was great. I'm going to have to say something. And now at least I can go, yeah, it was amazing. Hey, 50 what?
4-7.
54-7.
54-7. And then he's going to go, yeah, especially those last 10 minutes, it was fucking close. No, 54-7, motherfucker. No, it wasn't. Yeah, but what I really like is when one left center managed to tackle, and by then I like you would for a history podcast, my eyes are rolling back in my head. I just can't even talk rugby with people. But you tell me what the salient points are, James, so I can get away with it.
Well, that's pretty much it. 54-7 is a huge scoreline.
Okay.
With Mani Labok kicking all of his kicks.
Mani Labok.
Mani Lebok.
Le Bock.
And then what you can also tell the Suid-Afrikaans...
I mean, you were born to be a Springbok with
Yeah,
that. No?
you're literally Le Bock.
What you can tell the Suid-Afrikaans person that you're speaking to about the Bok game
Not
is
an
that...
Afrikaans person. I just always think rugby fans, I was associated with an Afrikaans
Which
voice.
makes
But it
sense.
could be anyone. Could be someone like Sandile, you know, he's a big rugby fan.
And Dial.
Yeah, and then they come and talk to me and they're like, oh, yeah, that game was great. Eh? I really have nothing to contribute.
You can contribute that the Boks are playing Italy this coming
Thanks,
Saturday.
James. You see, this is why I pay attention to you on a Monday. All right, so
I wouldn't.
So
yeah,
is it
but
basically everyone
as he goes, yeah, that's a lekker game. Eh? I can go, yeah, but Italy's next. And he's going to think I'm a fan. Good,
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah, so international rugby season is well underway. Even the British and Irish Lions are doing their thing. They were in Australia this weekend, kicking off their Australian tour. They're playing some clubs rugby, if that could have been worded differently. They played
It's
the
club rugby's.
clubs as rugby's.
Clubs rugby's. Yeah.
They played the Western Force this weekend. In big news, though, I wanted to do something where we cover like South Africans who have won some stuff in the last few months.
Yeah.
Dirk Coetzee mentioned it last week, and South Africans have kind of shone in the spotlight in the last
We
few
do
years.
we do really well
Yeah.
in particular in individual sports. You know, things like golf and swimming, and that's always where we excel. Our team sports, we sometimes do really well, and sometimes we just cuck. They
Our
keep trying to
runners have
sell.
been amazing.
They keep trying to sell this women's. Is it cricket?
Could be women's rugby. They
Or,
started a
or
women's rugby league.
I don't know. Anyway, they keep trying to sell this to me every time I happen to be near a TV. They're like, "Who's Desiree Ellis? She's the coach of the."
The women's cricket.
Okay, yeah. They keep trying to sell me that shit. I don't want to watch women playing cricket. I can't imagine anything more boring.
They probably don't want you watching them.
But they need every pair of eyes they can get. Surely,
That's also something.
do they
that
win stuff or are they?
I don't know how much money is also pumped into like the women's side of sport.
Not yet.
compared to
No.
But dude, it's just it's a non. Okay, so let me ask you this: can you name one woman on the women's cricket team in South Africa?
I can't name one man.
Yeah, I
I'm
probably would
actually on
struggle with that
yeah.
too.
Cricket's a bad example.
I mean, no, that's not true. Temba Bavuma. Come on.
fair. Yeah,
You can
okay.
get that right. Who's the fuck? You don't know anyone in the women. They keep selling, and they're selling it hard. Hey, they're like, oh, the female protea, the frotias is what Ben calls them, right? And then they try to like gin them up for us so that we must all be excited. I don't know any kids, and I've got these nephews who are sport mad. If I asked them about the women's cricket team, they would think I'd had a stroke.
Yeah, but they are little boys. They're little girls who
telling
want to
you,
be cricketers.
telling you, little girls don't give a shit about women's cricket. I'm
No,
telling you.
I don't know.
Watch someone. Quiz your daughter if you're on your way to school or something. Now, I think it might be holidays or midterms or whatever. But if you've got your daughter in the car, ask her like name a female South African cricket player and see if she can come up with a name. They really are. It's all marketing and bullshit. Anyway,
Lots
give me
of
some
money.
more.
Okay, so I'm going to start with golf because it's the most recent. Last night / early hours of this morning, a 20-year-old South African won the Rocket Classic.
Yes.
His name, Aldrich Potgieter.
Yeah, there he is.
Yeah,
Potgieter's not skitter.
that are him.
Look at him.
Ben says he looks like a lesbian.
Yeah, but you know what? He can really play some beautiful golf. I had this conversation with Ben. Ben can be very rude about
How
other
old did
people's
you say he
appearances.
is?
20.
20 years old.
Wow.
And he's just like born and bred to play golf.
100%.
Absolutely loves it.
He shot a record-breaking round at the Detroit Golf Club this weekend. He went 7 under on
Right.
the back 9 and had 5 birdies and an eagle. So he absolutely smashed the Rocket Classic.
By the way, I just want to say, we'll carry on celebrating South African sports wins in a moment, but someone's just come in and said, no, Desiree's Banyana's coach. She's not the cricket coach.
See, we're so good at the sport thing.
Anyway, they're trying to sell that one to
proves
us
our
hard
point,
as well.
actually. We just
All right.
don't know.
See, nobody even knows who she's the coach for. That's how unimportant women's sport is in this country. All right. Go on. Who else have we got?
More winnings. Cricket, obviously, we won the last week. The Proteas beat Australia in the final. Tim Pavuma bringing home the trophy for the boys. In the rugby sevens, the men's sevens team won the 2025 HSBC 7 Series, beating Spain 19-5 in LA. And that happened in May 25. Leigh-Ann, you mentioned the athletics. Akani Simbini took home gold at the Botswana Grand Prix, gold at the Xiamen Diamond League, gold at the Rabat Diamond League, and also anchored South Africa's relay team to win gold at the World Relays.
That's
very good.
World Relay was amazing
100%.
to watch.
It was huge.
Wow.
That was during the
Akani
course
Simbini.
of April, May. We also took home gold. Golf, again, Dalen Naidu claimed his first European Tour title at the Investec SA Open.
Hey, Dalen Naidu. We haven't heard of him before either. And frankly, I hadn't heard of this other dude that you told me about, just Aldrich Potgieter, either until today.
Yeah, I mean...
But this is great. Look, we're doing well. UFC, someone says?
UFC, we did... Drickus is world champion in his weight class at the moment. The rugby, here's a women's sport. South African Springbok women secured their 4th continental title with a dominant 61-17 win over Madagascar during the course of the Africa Women's Cup in rugby.
So
that's something that the women's team won.
Justin Damon says, I'm not interested in women playing football, cricket, or rugby. Women aren't interested in any of it either. It's meant to breed lesbianism. The cricket team can say they're batting for the other team. All right, good. I think you're probably closer to the mark than you think.
Gerda Steyn, obviously also doing the iconic Comrades win this past June.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then as well as the under-20
Winning is cool.
Cup of Nations, May 16th. The South African under-20s won the under-20 African Cup of Nations.
Okay, but now that's a very niche category that you're in. Under 20 at the African Cup of Nations, under 20 team. It's like, okay.
Here's more niche. The Sasol Amawilis, which is the men's under 23 basketball team.
Can't they give them a better name?
I agree. That seems very wrong. That doesn't seem like it should be what we should call them.
Hey, what do you do? Play for the Amawilis. Get out of here.
The Amapolo.
Well, the Amawilis were crowned African champions in February this year of the wheelchair basketball.
Wheelies.
Amawilis.
Terrible name.
I agree.
I thought you were saying Willies.
No.
You would think they're the same if someone says it, though.
Yeah.
That's been the last few months for South Africans. We've really kind of actually done the most, especially in the world of athletics, rugby and cricket.
Well, I appreciate you trying to gin it up.
I tried.
Well done. No, and there are lots of people there that we should be celebrating. I just think that when people are trying to sell you something and they're telling you it's so great, and then when you check it out, you're like, this is not great.
That's how I feel about most sports.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in no position to give any point of view on whether or not a sport is tremendously exciting or not, because I just find all of it boring too. But I can tell that there's an extra amount of effort being put in to try and you guys have got to watch Banyana.
Yeah.
Got to watch this. It's so amazing. And then everybody kind of goes.
There's a massive push in Europe and the UK, especially at the moment, for women's football. They call it the Women's Super League. And even Sky are starting to pump quite a lot of money into
but that's the media trying to do. Are the stadiums full?
No,
of course not
at all.
That'll tell you everything you need to know.
I mean,
and really, here's an interesting comment from somebody. This is from Carl. He says, supply and demand. I can name 10 male Proteas easily. I can only name Holfart in the women's team. Is that her name? Holfart. WHOLE.
Yeah, they do.
Holfart.
Holfart, yeah.
That's her name? Anyway, she's in the women's team, and only because her name is hilarious that he can remember it. Holfart. Okay, there we go.
Even to the point where the Switzerland women's, this is their national women's team, their actual team. They played an under-15 boys team last week called Luzerne FC or something, and they lost 7-0. So even like the caliber of sport quality is actually largely different. And I think that's why
Well, I just think we have, we've all moved on to a much more authentic and real world in the last 2 or 3 years. It really has changed. It continues to change. There are still people living in that world of political correctness and bullshit. There's still people who are living there. There's still people who are wearing masks. There are still people who are, like, they think it's 2020.
it's really weird.
And I don't know how to explain this to them. Like, some of these are not stupid people, but clearly there's something missing. You want to walk up to them and shake them and go, no, those days are done now. You can't bully people into, you must like this and you mustn't say that. And it's just not going to work anymore.
It's like a really weird place of pushing against wokeness at the moment.
Yeah, and wokeness is dead. It's dead and in the coffin, and it's been nailed shut, and it's not coming out. It's
Do you think
done.
there'll be like a second wave of wokeness, or
It won't
Well, I
happen.
mean-
It won't happen in our lifetimes.
I don't know. It always has happened. I mean, history repeats itself. Look at the hippies.
Yeah, but the hippies, I mean, people make fun of the hippies, and they had their time to shine in the 60s. But then after that, they became like a joke.
Well, same thing here, but it's going to reoccur.
Wokeism is a ridiculous thing. And, I mean, you've been in the media business for a while. You couldn't say certain stuff, and you couldn't get away with certain ideas. And, the woke brigade would come and cancel you for anything. I just don't think they have the power anymore. And that way of thinking is dead. It's actually just embarrassing. It's kind of like being, 1994 racist. It's just like, it's something so shit that people just go, one of those, are you?
I say it comes in waves.
Yeah, it will.
Look at the new Nazi movement.
It
in
will.
America.
Absolutely. It will come back, but it won't come back for a long time. It's at the moment, it's too shameful. If you genuinely believe those things right now, it's just embarrassing. People don't
I
want to
think-
be with you.
I think things are different because of wokeism.
oh, for sure.
We certainly aren't doing the things that we used to do years ago. It has changed.
Okay. Well, maybe give me some examples, but we'll get to that. Apparently, Roldrol says wokeness is huge in the Netherlands. 1,700 protests per year in Den Haag.
Jeez, like
I love what happened in The Hague last week. Donald Trump went there for NATO, right?
that's where our guy's from, by the way, Jan Buchel.
Oh, Jan Buchel.
The Netherlands.
All right, yeah.
Let's hope
You've
that.
still got to get him on the show.
Dude, I've got his phone
All right, so
number now.
Den Haag, they had the NATO summit, and Donald Trump was there, and he basically went to tell the Europeans, you're going to have to pay for your own defense. Because, NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, they've got an agreement. That's the whole reason NATO is a thing. It was started during the Cold War for the North Atlantic countries, which means Europe and America, effectively, to band together against the threat of war with the Soviet Union and its allies. So NATO's been around for years. America has pretty much paid for NATO. I think to the tune of some 80% of all the bills land on American taxpayers' laps. So American taxpayers are paying for the security of European citizens, which doesn't seem right. So you remember when Trump barged into that one in like 2016 when he was elected, and he like pushed all these European leaders aside and kind of looked down his nose at them. And people thought he was just very rude and uncouth. Well, he went this time, and the president,
sure
of
they were
NATO,
looking forward
the
to that.
president of NATO, even called him Daddy. Said, "Daddy's home."
Oh,
It's so
ew.
creepy, right? It's so creepy.
so weird.
But Donald Trump must have left there feeling very good because they've all, with the exception of Spain, said that they're going to pay 5% more of each of their budgets towards their own security, which is great. Like, the children are actually looking after the children a little bit more. They're becoming more responsible. So daddy can like go back to doing what daddy does. He doesn't have to be at home making sure that the children are, sucking the right tit or whatever. It's
so
so
weird.
embarrassing. I mean, really, Europe is just... Anyway. James, you still have to get a machosha and why are you gay guy. Don't fill up his plate, Gareth.
Why are you gay?
Yeah, we need the why are you gay guy. We do need him. let Ben handle UFC on Friday. James will just butcher it.
That's fair. That is actually fair.
Okay.
That is one sport I know very minimal about. One sport I do know a lot about, football. Club World Cup is still happening. It's almost finished. Sundowns, unfortunately,
Yeah, they were out already. We know that.
are on their way home.
Oh.
So sad for them, but it is heating up.
Who's in there that we would care about, James?
No African teams left. Who you would care about, maybe, I'd say PSG, because they just won a Champions League, so they could win this one.
About them.
Real Madrid, because they're always the team to watch in these kinds of competitions. And that's about it. Chelsea fans, don't get your hopes up. Same for
All right.
Bayern fans, I think.
I don't know if you saw this. It's 7 o'clock already, so we've got to take a break in a second. Don't know if you saw this, but Jared says he watched a bit of Glastonbury this weekend. You know, they had the Glastonbury Festival. And he said the hypocrisy is out of this world. 100,000 people who pay a minimum of £500 to watch overpaid music artists rant about human rights.
Good Lord.
I wouldn't go to Glastonbury. And it's muddy and gross. Stinking people. Hippies.
I saw
fucking hippies.
the extent of capitalism at Glastonbury this weekend also, because I sometimes listen to like live music on YouTube. And what they have done this year is on the stage, behind the stage, is like this railing that they've built where they've got like obviously VVIP people that can now stand on the stage with them.
So other people have to look at them?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really weird, actually.
You know, it's
Yeah.
everybody, it's just so unattractive that all these people are interested in attention. It's so unattractive. I want to pay, just think about what goes through someone's head, all right? I want to pay the organizers of Glastonbury a whole lot more money so that I can not only be in the front to watch the artists, which would be a perfectly acceptable thing. Let's say you're a massive music fan. I know, for example, Alanis Morissette was there, and she doesn't do a lot of shows anymore, but I reckon she probably would have done a good show. And maybe if you're a fan of hers, you would have paid some money to be there. But now you pay extra so you could be behind her, so all the crowd have to look at you as well. Me. Look at me. And then you probably, these people are doing dumb shit like they grinding and gyrating.
Oh,
Fucking,
ew.
you imagine like these losers who've paid a whole lot of money and then think that the crowd is going to... The crowd will not watch you. They don't care about you. You're a distraction. You're like you're part of the set. You're not the
You're
reason they're there.
backstage.
You're not the
You're
artist.
the backup dancers.
Yeah, you're crappy backup dancers
Yeah.
who don't know the moves. That's what you are. Fucking losers. Anyway, there was this guy called... I've never heard of him before in my life. He's like some dreadlocked artist. He goes up on stage and he starts singing Free, Free Palestine. And then he goes, Deaf to the RDF. And I was like, God, you know, this is actually someone who is singing, chanting hate speech shit up there. And it's being broadcast on the BBC. It's just so embarrassing.
Even worse, his name is Bob Villain.
Bob Villain. Yeah, right. Bob Villain with a VYLAN. And he's got such shit music. And this guy, you know, I suppose if you're a shitty musician, and there were a lot of musicians at Glastonbury, there always are. If you're a shitty musician, I suppose you have to have some angle, right? You have to have something that you could be... This is his thing. He was like, I know how to get the most attention. I know how to make this all about me. People are me experts, and not in the way that you think. They're experts at sucking all the air out of the room.
It's like, dude, we don't care about your opinion.
No.
If we want,
I mean,
if
you
we
think
like
any
you,
of
we
those-
want to hear your music.
All those people at Glastonbury were either on MDMA or mushrooms,
Yeah.
or they were drunk out of their fucking minds. They are not there for politics.
It's the I know how to make a TikTok clip moment.
Right. And that's what's
exactly
happened.
what it is.
But I hope they arrest him. I hope they put him in jail. And I hope he stays there for a long time. Because
Well-
you cannot ask a crowd of some 100,000 people to start chanting with you on essentially a death chant, a hateful, revolting thing to bring into what's meant to be some muddy hippie festival.
He did respond to the backlash.
What did he
He
say?
doubled down and he said, I said what I said. And
Okay.
that's what he's doubled down.
They should just deport him from the UK and never allow him back. I don't know how you can think that that's okay in a civilized society. That goes for people who sing about killing people here in South Africa. Same thing. I'm going to be consistent about this. Bob Villain.
Would it be like coercing hate speech to do something like this? To like
You see,
get people to say it with you?
if you actually say death to someone,
Right.
I mean, it's not even arguable whether that's a political statement or not. You're saying that you want people in the Israeli Defense Force to be killed. There's no other way to interpret death to the IDF. Now, I don't care if you support Israel or you support the people of Gaza or Hezbollah or Hamas or Iran. That's entirely your business. You're allowed to support whoever you want. And I'm not going to tell you that you're a moron. Unless you're in my world and I'm having a discussion or a debate with you and you say moronic things, you're allowed to believe whatever stupid shit you want to believe. But to call out death to someone or to a group of people, to a bunch of people who are conscripted often, soldiers for the army that the country that they're trying to defend or that they're being given orders in, that to me, especially by a musician, just seems like, there he is. Yeah, he looks totally stable. If you're a musician asking for that, I can never be on your side. If you're a politician saying that, I can never be on your side. Don't say death to anyone. I don't want anyone to be dead. I don't like the idea of death. I was joking about the Ayatollah the other day. But I don't go to sleep at night going, I wish they'd nuke that Ayatollah. I don't want that to happen. I don't think that America's that interested in regime change. I don't want them to be interested in regime change. I think the people of Iran should decide for themselves what happens. And I don't want them to do a Benito Mussolini and string the Ayatollah up and hang him from a pole. I would prefer this to be sorted out in an adult and mature and sensible way, without anyone shouting death to anyone else. That would be quite nice. Hasn't the Middle East seen more than its fair share of death? Can we not get beyond this and start to cultivate a responsible, kinder, more sensible, more caring part of the world, and attitudes which in some way engender that in that part of the world? I would love to see that. I would like to see less bombs, and I would like to see people starting to treat each other with decency and respect. That would be really nice, don't you think? So Wade says, check out the Mud Wizard. Hippies on home turf are a force. Mari says, to listen to him singing, it was just horrific. The IDF have enough problems without their country and themselves, but his singing is just awful, says Mari. It's like this Nota guy in South Africa race baiting over podcasts just to be relevant and noticed. Yeah. He's like Temu Rage Against the Machine, says Anton. He also did the From the River to the Sea. Yeah, people love that one. You know, a dumb chant that you can memorize in 2 seconds flat may be effective because a crowd of really, really low IQ people could start singing it. But I would like to bring back more complicated chants where people actually have to understand a whole lot. I mean, I'd like to bring back more complicated language, frankly, and better punctuation. For example, the other day I was saying, and you'll appreciate this as a bit of a pedant, Leigh-Ann. I know we got to take a break, Flex, I know. You're a pedant like I am, right? So I put up a tweet about Javier Milei, and I said, more inconvenient truth or more inconvenient facts or data from Argentina for socialists. But I realized it actually should have been more inconvenient data from Argentina, comma, for or socialists or whatever it was. I mean, it's pedantry, but it means a totally different thing. I'm not talking about Argentine socialists.
Yes.
I'm talking about socialists who are not in Argentina, looking at Argentina and going, oh, our stuff doesn't work again.
Yeah.
Right?
Can change everything.
Yep, it does. And I know you love a little bit of grammar and
I
punctuation. I know you do. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment. Lots going on today, lots to discuss. And Des Latham joining us in a short while to talk about history. Don't go anywhere.
Are you excited for the start of the Springbok season? Ben is, Sandila is, and our special guest this week, television heartthrob and renowned sports MC Robbie Cruz very much is too. Welcome to an extra special episode where we unpack how befuck the box season is ahead and how to plan your life accordingly around the fixtures. The Barbarians, Italy, Georgia, Australia, New Zealand, Argentina, and all the rest up north, they're all queuing up for a crack at the World Champions in 2025. Let's get into how it's all going down right here on episode 54 of the On The Bounce Show.
Jason was like, let's get out of here, man.
When I first met you, I was like, who is this colored boxer screaming in the microphone?
I had to bring in a guest who's a Jew. How's it, Jimmy? Do all Jews start dueling at 13 after your bar mitzvah?
After your bar mitzvah. We do what we want.
Energy.
We do what we want, Chief. We're in charge.
Yeah. And just to prove that we do whatever we want here on the show, Diddy used to have parties from 6 in the morning until 12 midday.
Yes.
What the hell? It's not always about 6, you guys.
Phela mina ngiyinsizwa mina. Ngiyinsizwa.
We have lots to talk about this morning. It is Monday. It's the end of June. Oh, my God. Tomorrow's July.
It's crazy. Crazy.
So we got lots of stories in the news we want to get to. And as I said, Des Latham will be joining us in a short while so we can talk some history. What? Oh, you're going to move.
Closer. Even
James is like giving rude hand signals there. He was going like
It's
this. He was going like this.
It's
This
like-
was the
this
one. He
is-
was going like this.
so go like that, and
Like that.
he was whispering.
What's that one all
Go
about? Like,
closer.
is that
Go
appropriate?
closer.
It's going like this.
And I was already
is that?
close. Goodness me.
Anyway, how rude. What a rude interruption to our otherwise pleasant conversation this morning. So China's unveiled a tiny spy drone that looks like a mosquito. This is all we need. Okay, like two of the worst things you could possibly imagine. A mosquito and the Chinese spy. What will you do? Come into your house. Sit on your pizza table and watch you do dirty things. That's all you need. And it's going to sound like a mosquito, right? That thing buzzing around. They'll probably just make it like sting you and itch you just to add.
Wait, there must be a reason, a proper reason.
Okay. Their military research team has unveiled a mosquito-like micro-drone. It's a spy micro-drone, 2 centimeters long. And weighing,
That's quite a big mosquito.
well, not really. It's probably normal for a mosquito. Weighing 0.3 grams, Leigh-Ann. That's very light. Designed for covert battlefield reconnaissance. Showcased on state-run CCTV 7, the bionic device mimics insect flight with wings flapping 500, look at it, there it is, wings flapping 500 times per second. It's packed with sensors for surveillance, making it nearly undetectable by radar because it's just too small. Radar is growing, the drone here, this thing, it reflects a growing global trend in micro-drone warfare with similar technologies already deployed in countries like the US and Norway. Oh no, Norway's got them too. Hurdy-gurdy-gurdy-gurdy-gurdy. Imagine that thing flying around. Hello, I'm from Norway. I'm the friendliest little mosquito drone. Oh, for God's
I would
sake.
notice that if it was flying around me.
Yeah, I think I would. I'd swat it.
Yeah.
That's what I'd do. I've got one of those rackets with electricity that goes through it.
Oh yes, I wonder if that would
The one
work.
that goes when something flies into it.
Yeah.
I love that thing. In summer, that is so much fun. It's like you get to play tennis every night in your bedroom.
Yes.
It's wonderful. So that thing would have no chance against my electric racket.
Very good.
There it is. Very, very strange.
It's more fly-sized. But anyway.
Yeah, okay. You say fly, I say mosquito. All right, and then this is interesting. You've got some new funeral style you want to tell us about.
Yeah, you remember that one trend that, it was trending, that funeral in somewhere in Africa.
Which one? The famous one during COVID?
Yes.
Where they were all carrying the coffin and dancing?
And dancing and
Yeah, of
looking
course.
really cool
Everybody
with their
remembers
sunglasses.
that.
So this has garnered over 2 million views.
okay.
And this stems from Nigeria.
Nigeria is on top of this stuff. Okay, you going to play it for us? Let's go. Okay, explain that to me in case, and for people who weren't watching, who were listening.
So I had to figure out where it was from firstly, because a lot of people were saying this is in New Orleans. And I was like, no.
That's Nigeria.
It's definitely Nigeria. So the person who posted that is from Nigeria. But yeah, that's the spinning coffin, or as someone called it, RIP, rotate in peace.
Oh, so the coffin is on a...
Is in the middle of a truck and it spins round and round.
Okay, because I couldn't even see what was going on there.
No, it's crazy.
Oh, all right. So this is the new thing. So people, I wonder what it must be like to get all the love that you should have had during life after you're dead.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of a pointless exercise, right? That dead person has no idea. Even if they asked for this in their will, they're not there to enjoy it.
No.
They have no idea. How
I mean,
terrible.
it looks like a lot of money and effort.
Huge amount of money. I mean, that coffin does look like it's made out of, it's like a mirror ball,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Unbelievable. So, okay. Well, that's going on there. How do Michelin stars work? You know.
Michelin stars, you would think, what do you think of when you think of Michelin?
I think of the Michelin Man, and I know that they are related in some way, but it's also the way that they grade restaurants. You get like, I think the most you can have is 5.
So all it comes from is the Michelin Man and
Right.
tires. It's exactly
Okay.
from there.
All right.
So cars in the early 1900s, Michelin weren't selling enough tires. How do we sell more tires? We could make sure more cars are sold, surely. But what if we took those people who do have cars, and in those days it was only the elite who were going to, watch the opera with their little goggles. And they weren't traveling very far. It was just to look posh in their cars. So Michelin, the two brothers, set up a series of maps where they basically recommended driving tours to these rich people so that they could wear out their tires. And so they started pinpointing amongst these points of interest were restaurants. So a 1-star would be worth traveling this far for.
Oh.
A 2-star would be worth traveling even further for.
Okay.
A 3-star would be worth a journey where you had to even stay over. All because the Michelin brothers were trying to get people to use up their
Have
tires.
you ever eaten at Michelin star restaurants?
Yes, I have. I don't know what the name of it was. It was a long time ago.
Was it so spectacular that you can remember it?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That good, huh?
Yeah.
How many is the maximum they
3.
give? 3. Oh, I thought they went
3
up
is
to...
like worth really.
I
a
thought they
big
went up to
journey.
5.
I'm sure it's only 3.
I think you're right. Okay.
But yes,
Oh,
it
good.
stemmed from tires, which is amazing.
Okay, I went, oh, good, because we've got Des Latham on the line, which I've been excited about for a long, long time. Des, welcome. It's really fantastic to have you on this early on a Monday morning and to talk about your podcast and everything else. It's a pleasure to have you.
Wow, Gareth. Coming from you, that's a real honor. Thank you for listening and thank you for having me on your show.
I'm such a fan of history, so it didn't take much for me to find your history podcast, which is called The History of South Africa. And for people who don't know who you are, you're a media veteran. You've held senior editorial roles across print, TV, digital, all kinds of places. And now this excellent podcast, which I can't recommend enough, The History of South Africa. Give us a little retrospective, since this is history we're talking about, of how it all began. And let's get into the history of South Africa. But where did it all start for you?
Oh, well, as you say, I mean, I've had, since the 80s, I've worked in radio my whole life, and as a journalist mainly, but I also ran a mobile phone apps company from 1999 to 2008. So I kind of intersected digital and legacy media constantly. But I mean, the thing, to answer your question directly about the history of South Africa, I did a podcast called Anglo-Boer War. I started in 2017. And the reason why I did that is because I realized there was quite a significant conflict, and there was virtually nothing about it written from a South African point of view as podcasts. There was a BBC series, and there were 1 or 2 inserts for other history shows. So I thought, well, let me have a deep dive in this, and began to cover it starting in October, which is when the war started in 1899 in October. And I thought, well, let me cover it weekly, a bit like journalism, covering it like a story. And then I took a deep dive and thought I'd create some of the voices. So that's a long shot, especially seeing as I'm not trained in drama. But I thought, well, let me try that, because I'd want to hear what these people sounded like. So I did a lot of research into what their voices were, and I tried to copy that. So, for example, Rhodes had quite a high-pitched voice, and DeVette had a very gravelly, deep voice. And so that's what I did. I just thought, let me just try and replicate the actual senses, and then cover the story from original papers and documents, memoirs and journals, rather than as a historian academic. And I thought I'd last a few weeks, perhaps a few months. And the reaction was just incredible. I mean, the response from the audience was amazing globally. I didn't realize that Russians were listening. Saudi Arabians, South Koreans. It completely changed my understanding of our own history and how interesting it was to other people. And that's really the story. And from there, being conscripted in my youth and being involved in wars in Angola, personally, I thought I have a knack for telling a story from a military perspective. So I began a series on Stalingrad, for example, and then the Falklands Wars, and I had good responses to that. And then did the border wars. And then it took me about a year before I started the history of South Africa. I kept delaying, because the other stories you can kind of do as a nice to have, but the history, when you start opening that book, it's a bit like Pandora's box as well. It's really difficult to try and get the nuance of the period right, as you know, Gareth.
Well, I mean, I'm amazed that you know, it's quite audacious to take on the history of South Africa. As you said, that there was definitely a gap, because while you can find many terrific history podcasts, and there are so many that I could recommend, it's lovely to have someone in South Africa doing this. Someone also has a flair for being able to tell a story and knowing the medium. And really, podcasting is a terrific medium for this, because we can all get together, everybody who loves history, and we can feel part of something without having to be in a classroom or, God forbid, a lecture hall, where mostly history is drummed into us until we're mind numbed. But I love the way that you do it, because it feels like a journey you can hop on, and there are so many different places that you could take South African history. What's your favorite current? Because I know this must change from time to time. You mentioned the Anglo-Boer War, and that's how you got in. Is that still your favorite part of South African history? Because we have such an incredibly rich smorgasbord of stuff to pluck from. I mean, you could go back 400 years, you could go back 20 years. You'll find something amazing in all of that.
Good question. I think it was the 1700s.
Yeah.
Because that's the period before the reinforcement of race separation, where you had the situation that developed where, for example, the first trekkers who trekked into the Eastern Cape, Conrad de Base, for example, he was a 7 foot tall, like monster, who had been alienated by his people around Swellendam. He was an orphan, and his in-laws basically stole his land. So he hated, like, the Dutch way in many ways, even though he was kind of conflicted. And they ended up marrying the Arabi queen, Yesi, who was also a Xhosa woman, who was also large. She was 6 foot tall. So the two of them, I have this imagination.
A race of giants.
Them basically She was running the Rarabi clan, which ended up fighting the British through the whole of the 19th century. So you had this curious moment in time where whites and blacks in South Africa were living in a different space, where it was not easy to see the future. We look back now and say, well, it's obviously had guns and the Xhosa did not, and so on. But that's kind of an insult to the memory of the ancestors of the Xhosa, to say that they, were fragile and being overrun by the frontiersmen who arrived. It was actually the other way around a lot of the time. The first Dutch integrated themselves in Xhosa and Khoi society. They married into the society. This was quietly dropped through the 19th century when the British arrived, and the lower middle class, 1820 settlers, most of them, wanted to reinforce the us and them situation. Yep. And secondly, the trekkers, when they trekked into the interior, regarded black people as heathens, and then created this bubble of religion, stroke race and ethnicity that then moved into the interior of South Africa and then reinforced the separation. And I think for me, there was a kind of interesting moment there in the 1700s where South Africans were interplaying in a different way than we understand now. And there's, of course, been a warped logic around this. During apartheid, the nationalists wanted us to believe that whites and blacks were always separate. And now the African nationalists want us to believe that
it's amazing how
blacks were always separate.
It's amazing and frustrating to think of how politics has twisted so much of what South African history, as you've just indicated through this story that you told us, which may be completely unfamiliar to many people, but it's never ever that binary. It's never straightforward. It's never hot or cold, black or white, rich or poor, young or old. It's always this very, very complicated story. And the more you get into the characters, the more you understand that it's not straightforward and it's not the history that's sold to us. How do you feel about the state of history in education in South Africa? Because it drives me mad that there are teachers who are teaching it without any love at all. I mean, I was very lucky, and I'm sure that there are terrific history teachers in South Africa who are doing their level best to imbue a love and a lifelong interest in history in their kids. But I don't think a lot of people are studying history, sadly, and it's the only subject that teaches you about people at school. I just don't know that it's very popular. What are your findings in this respect?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I, like you, was fortunate with my history teachers, but as a kid, I grew up as a Zulu-speaking child, and I was always imbued with stories, Zulu stories, and my English background stories. So I had this combined element, and then I had a grandmother who was a great storyteller. So she would kind of tell me some of the things that happened in her lifetime, and I began to question, obviously, what I was hearing at the schools later. I did African history honors at university. I did 3 majors: African history or history, anthropology, and journalism. And I often say to people that if you don't understand the trajectories, as you've said, of patterns of human existence, you won't understand things like Donald Trump's rise, for example, or Vladimir Putin. You won't fully understand those people because it's like goldfish. You'll only, there'll be cognizance of the moment. There won't be an understanding of, an empirical understanding of how trajectories work and how people operate. And none of these things is a myth, and none of these things is not understandable. They're all classic examples. And we don't really have enough time to explore that. But I mean, if you don't understand the past, you'll never understand the future. And then if we are only rooted in perceptions of the immediacy, then you're going to float along a river of emotion like you do on social media. And that obscures reality. The only reality you can understand is to dispassionately assess risks and opportunities. And as thinking people, whether you're in business or a child of 13, if we're fed incorrect information, you're going to come to false conclusions about the present, and therefore you're going to be seriously deluded about the future. So that, for me, is you're right. The teachers, luckily I had teachers who broke many rules in the 70s when I was in high school. They taught us things they weren't supposed to. Yeah. And they made us understand things. So I was fortunate. I went to school at Durban High School, and we had a lot of teachers who were kind of pushing back against the the mores of the time. 76 happened when I was 13. I was a young adolescent, and the uprisings in Soweto had a major effect on our consciousness as young men and women of South Africa, of all races, to understand what was happening there as you become politically aware, and so on. So I suppose it's a realization. It's not about romantic delusions, history. People have that they want to go back to something. It's impossible. Yeah. And Vico, the Italian historian, said it really well, that we live in spirals of history where it looks like it's coming back to where it was, but it's actually not. It's a spiral. It's always moving in a direction somewhere else. So that's really, I think, the essence, Gareth.
I loved what you said. Yeah, I loved what you said there about how, so many people are wondering, almost blind through what is actually happening around them right now. Because you live history, and history is always going on. Things that happened yesterday are now consigned to history. And because we live in the time of social media and the internet, news becomes old news very, very fast. And eventually old news is made interesting by historians. I like what you said about how there are people who are confounded by what's happening in American politics, for example, or in the Middle East. And they're genuinely confused, and it makes no sense to them. Everything is a big surprise. Everything is potentially World War III. Because they've never picked up a history book or been told a story from the past. And, it does repeat itself. And I think that's very, I find that satisfying. It gives me great bearings in a world where often it looks like we're going into uncharted territory. Sometimes that uncharted territory has been charted before by, Francis Drake or Darwin or Cook. Someone has been out in that wild, tempestuous sea at some point before us. And if you don't know your history, it will seem like everything is just a big surprise. I just don't know how people can choose to live that way. South Africa especially, though, I think a lot of it has been reduced to kind of the stories of racial animus. And I think that also plays into what the politicians try to tell us all the time. What things have you learned, especially in putting this podcast together? Because I'm convinced that your deep dives into the research and figuring out who the characters are and telling the stories has led you down a number of rabbit holes where you found out about South Africans that are quite inconvenient to the people who want to make things black and white. Pardon the pun.
I mean, it's spot on. The stories, every time I read someone's journal, I'm always struck by how the contestations of the time are as complex as they are now. So Mkabayi is one of those stories that's inconvenient. Yeah. Mkabayi was Shaka's aunt. She, working with Dingaan and his stepbrother, concocted a assassination and had Shaka killed in Kwadukuza, Stanger. Mm-hmm. Now, she's was apparently quite a character, and she hated Shaka because Nandi was her sister, and Nandi died after the move from Zululand into northern Zululand to southern Zululand, from Mflatuzi area to Kwadukuza. And Mkabayi blamed Shaka on her sister's death. He believed that Nandi's death was caused by Shaka's move. So, and there were other things that were upsetting her about Shaka's actions. He was showing some signs of delusions, and his non-stop wars had really upset, especially the women of the time. This is 1828. So she basically convinced Dingaan to kill Shaka, which he did. Then afterwards, there was a gathering of the councillors, the Ndunas, and the chiefs in Kwadukuza to discuss what to do. And they were going to nominate someone else to be the next king of the Zulus. And Mkabayi wanted Dingaan. So she dressed as a man. This is 1828.
Wow.
She dressed as a Zulu warrior, entered the Council of Men, and dominated that council and convinced them to basically appoint Dingaan as the new king. Now, the problem there was that he'd taken part in the killing of Shaka, but the oral tradition, the Zulu oral tradition, has it that he didn't really stab Shaka. He may have just cut him on the arm or something. Because a person who is involved in the killing of a king, even royalty, may not become the next king as part of the royalty. Very similar to, by the way, some of the European laws around royalty and the successions. So she convinced them by force of character and dressed as a man to vote in Dingaan, basically. And Dingaan became the king of the Zulu. So that story is not... That's a true story. That's oral tradition, 3 different strains of oral tradition. Certain things happen at different processes, and some of the people change a little. But that is true. And that story itself, it blows up that myth of Zulu maleness, the dominance of empire, because all warrior cultures are matrilineal. The Vikings are matrilineal. In other words, the power passes through the female line, even though the males are in power. Because the males are fighting so much, they're all dying.
Right.
Like the Vikings.
Yeah.
They go off. So you better pass on your succession through the woman because she's at home. Makes sense. It's the same with the Zulu. The Zulu and the Viking are very similar. And so are many other warrior societies, by the way.
Well, I
so
find
you have this woman running the show in Zululand in the
I love it.
1820s when Shaka was top of the pile. Now, that doesn't blow up preconceptions by itself.
Yeah.
I
find it's so puerile to do what, you know, like a lot of feminists these days are doing and saying, oh, it's his story, it's not her story, and you know, it's the patriarchy and it's always about men. And history is full of extraordinary, sometimes terrifying and very powerful women, and you can't. It seems to me like you're almost willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater if you start talking like that, because then you must disregard Catherine the Great, Elizabeth I, Mary Tudor, Hatshepsut, Nefertiti, so many other incredible women. I'm just drawing from absolute immediate front of mind memory. And here in South Africa, we've had plenty of those too. So I think it's silly for people to attack history as being a men's domain or a male pursuit, or saying that certain tribes are totally patriarchal and that there's nothing that we need to learn from them because it's all outdated and kind of tribal and backward. It's very, very unfortunate when people talk like that, right? They're missing so much of the story.
Yeah, I regard people who talk like that as having a serious questioning their maleness. I mean, the overt bravado. I'm a soldier. I've been in the police and the soldier, and I've been in conflict my whole life. You know, I grew up with a gun in my hand as a farmer's son.
Yeah.
You don't need to express overt senses of bravado or as maleness to prove that you're a man. People who do that, they must be questioning their own sexuality. If you think that the world is dominated by only men, then you've been fooled by the fact that you're not aware of just how male you may be. And so the predetermined cognitive function there is to say that have to reinforce the fact that I'm a man, which means that I'm questioning whether I am a man by doing that. So anyone who talks like that is deluded, of course, and does not really understand the function of gender and sex in the world. And we can have a long discussion about that. But anyway,
who are your favorite South African characters from history? I mean, you mentioned Shaka's aunt just now, which is a story I didn't know. I thought I knew a little bit about Zulu history, and I love Zulu history, but there are big parts of it missing. Who are your favorite characters? Because especially during that period from the kind of mid 1800s to probably the mid 1900s. There were so many truly amazing people in this country. This was one of the most exciting places in the world to be for a very long time. And, you know, from the military minds to the innovation, the inventors, the business people, the dangerous ones, the criminals, there were a lot of those too. South Africa was kind of a hub for that stuff.
There are many. I mean, one is Sol Plaatje, who's well known as a journalist in the turn of the 19th century. I mean, he was a translator for Baden-Powell in Mafeking, and he was big on the British Empire because he thought it would save black South Africans from the Boers. And during the conflict, the Boer War, he was a translator in Mafeking for Baden-Powell, the man who started the Scouts.
Yeah.
And he changed his mind basically because Baden-Powell had most of the black residents of Mafeking pushed out and they had to live between where the Boers were laying siege and where the whites were living in town. And he completely changed and actually wrote the first document of the ANC after the Boer War, which was not really well known. He was one of the main writers of the original ANC document. But he was not a simple like black-white person either. Even in that stage, when discussing these things, he did the first research into the effect of the Land Act on black South Africans from the point of view of black South Africans. And he discovered a lot of white farmers who were trying to push back against this new law. Some were saying, why is the government doing this? We're living together quite comfortably. We don't have to do this. And I found that interesting that someone who'd been at the cutting edge of colonial history, I guess, still had this capacity to tell a story that was nuanced he didn't say, all white farmers want us out the ground. He said, there's a huge pushback going on here. And of course, at the time, a lot of the media of the time were partisan, and it was post-Anglo-Boer War. So they were talking up the difference between whites and blacks. Jan Smuts was big on this as well, the discussion of how whites were in the minority, so we need to work together kind of thing. And there was like he kind of breaking down that misconception to some extent. So I think he is an example of someone that is underestimated now. He's got a journal of the Anglo-Boer War, which is fascinating. I used it heavily. Really interesting. And his English is, as a translator, he's highly skilled and highly trained narrative writer in various languages. So that's one. The other one is Kunrad de Base himself, who I've mentioned a few times. There's a book on him. I can't remember who wrote it, but there's a book on him now. But during the apartheid era, he was quietly put aside because he had a whole clan, which still lives in the Waterberg in the Limpopo province, mixed race clan. He had hundreds of descendants. I mean, he had 8 Khoi and Xhosa and wives that he lived with and traveled with around the whole.
8
South.
wives.
He started off in Switzerland. Yeah, he started off in South Africa. In Switzerland, he went to south of the Kai to live with the Yesi, and then he went into the Transformative region. He ended up in the Waterberg, which is near Zimbabwe, and died of malaria, they think, many years later. But he had a huge clan of people, and that story is that his descendants are an honorable and interesting people who, his story alone is one that needs a really good series. But because it was shelved during the apartheid era, you never heard of him. Most people never heard of him. But he had a major effect on the relations between the Xhosa and the British. He didn't like the British, and he would advise that Xhosa as a diplomat, and he spoke 3 languages. He spoke Xhosa, he spoke English, and he spoke Dutch. So he was quite an interesting intermediary in the process when the British first rocked up to the Nhlamba and what would become the Albany district around Grahamstown, for example. So that's really a fascinating character. That for me tells the truth of the country through the eyes of one man, and similarly with someone like Sol Plaatje. But there's every epoch, Gareth, there's someone in our history who you just think, my goodness. I mean, look at it at the moment. There's someone called Musk who's like destroying various and has been at the cutting edge of crazy and has affected the global economy with his car at first, his electric car system, and then politically. I look at him as a historian rather than just emotively. He's done no one any favors as South African, or has he? But that's an example of a person in an epoch from our part of the world who's come changed the world. And there's a long list. So, we live amongst people who are the most ancient people of the world. Yeah.
That's true, and I think our deep ancestry, which is all from this part of the world, and we have a unique claim to it because we've been able to go back to 100 and more thousand years ago to figure out where human beings originally came from. I think we've got a pretty good claim. here and in East Africa for the origins of our species. But I think that South Africa is also a bit like the Wild West, right? Because our politics, the way business is done here, everybody thinks that it's novel. And since 1994, we've had a kind of dispensation, certainly for the Zuma years of the last 30 years. We've had a very kind of chaotic mindset, but that's always been part of South Africa. South Africa's always been kind of, making it work, making something happen, coming to terms, people who were friends being enemies, then being friends again. And I think that our story is just very, very crazy. It's you used the word to describe Elon Musk. I don't think he falls outside of that category. What do you think the South African historical position is internationally? I mean, you said you've got listeners to your podcast, The History of South Africa. You've got people listening all over the world. What do you think fascinates them about us, and what do you think South Africa's place is in the world right now?
I think the fact that you've got this minority that ended up here in deep, darkest Africa and maintains the living inside a continent. I think the first thing is that they can't really understand how a place that is wild as our continent is, that someone would want to stay here. So there's this romantic illusion about that, I think, as a minority. My closest friends in America are all African Americans because of the same thing, because they are minority there, and they feel that how do you operate in Africa and we operate in America? Can we talk about it? We have like a meeting of minds, strangely enough. And second, so that's firstly, I think there's that exotic thing about how do you guys operate? One's very white and one's very black. When I was a journalist during Cadesa, working at 702, I met an Irishman from the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, who said to me, "You guys are lucky. When you are negotiating, you can see who's white and who's black. You don't have to say, I'm white, I'm black. You sit at a table and you negotiate your future." Firstly, he said, and whereas we have to kill each other to prove whether we're Protestant or Catholic. Wow. Because we can't tell. We all look the same. So I thought, well, that's an interesting view. And then he said to me, secondly, you don't have religion as a problem. So when we sit down, we have Catholic, Protestant. When you sit down to negotiate the ANC and the National Party in the early 90s, you say your prayers in various religions and you get started. It's not like in the way. Yeah. So I thought about this quite a bit. And I thought, he put his finger on it there. Because we are so different, we often bluntly express that to each other. Whereas, and a lot of poison comes out immediately. Whereas when you, in other parts of the world, sometimes they subsume their discussion of ethnicity under niceties. This happened in America, of course, which is now, there's a schism over this because they haven't addressed these issues properly, whereas we tend to do that. Then there's something else I need to say, which is that South Africa is riven and torn by conflict. It's basically a land that's been built on blood. And we are, as you said, we're Wild West, but you mustn't forget how close to the present that also means. Yeah. And during the changes, the negotiation, I kept reminding my friends in the ANC, as a journalist, I kept saying to them, don't make the mistake of thinking that you have fixed this country. The country is fixing itself. I mentioned 76 for a reason. When 76, the uprising in Soweto happened, it was driven by the PAC, not the ANC for a start. Secondly, it wasn't driven by any party. It was driven by the youths. They just had it. And they took control and rose up, and they did something to change the present. Then the politicians of the time were not sure how to react because the ANC had not stimulated it. They were sitting in Lusaka wondering what to do about it. Yeah. And slowly then agreed it was right and then came to the same thing with the mid-80s. And the same thing now is that politicians in our country think that all South Africans will do what they say. They don't realize that we are entrepreneurial, we are non-political, we survive, we get along, and we make changes where we have to. We do it, and politicians think that they are doing it. Yeah. I always laugh about this. And I think that, Gareth, in a nutshell, is about us as a group of people. Is we are very different, but we aren't that different when it comes to things that when we decide to do something, we will do it. Whether it's fixing a pothole, working as community police to stop crime, fixing our schools.
The problem is that the politicians are very good at taking credit, but very bad at accepting responsibility and blame. So I don't think that's ever going to change. And that's the case all over the world. It's not particular to South Africa. I know Leigh-Ann's also a bit of a history fan, not as much as I am. But, you know, your podcast in some way it's doing a tremendous job for probably a lot of kids. I'm sure that there are people who are studying history who would rather listen to your podcast than read some dreary, dusty old textbook that hasn't been updated since the 1950s. And with you being able to tell the stories that you tell, I'm sure for many people it is awakening an interest for them, which may just be the thing that gets them to study history at university. Perhaps it gets them to go and visit, you know, a museum somewhere, or pick up an interest in some aspect of military history. Who knows? That's quite a cool thing that comes along with doing what you do, right?
It's been a revolution. I must not underestimate the effect of what you just said, Gareth. I cannot believe my audience. I mean, the majority of them are young and they're all racist.
Yeah.
And they tell me that because I get emails from people. And I'm talking to the Royal Line in Lesotho, the Zulu Royal Line. They're sending me notes. The Swazi Royal Line sending me notes. I speak to some major translators and oral history tellers in South Africa, Afrikaans and Zulu, for example. It's just been a shattering effect on me personally, and a positive effect. I had no idea that people were hungry for this kind of thing. And that's why I said to you, I thought I'd start this and I'd do it as dispassionately, with passion, but to take, you know, when I tell a story, I tell the oral history from the Swazi or the Zulu, from the point of view of the oral historians, and I try and not predetermine and say, this is what happened. This is what people say happened, and then I integrate the journals and so on. And the response to that technique has been just enormous. I mean, someone contacted me, John Varty from Mpumalanga, and he said, he downloads the episodes to play at the schools that he mentors.
Yeah.
There's 45,000 kids that are listening there, for example. I had someone, just to pick from the reactions that I've had from people. I've had a family in Ceres, an Afrikaans family, who said that when they heard my series on the slaves and also the late 1600s, they started to think about things, and then the mother of, she's incredibly beautiful, but looks Southeast Asian, they said to me. And I'm like, okay. Anyway, I said, you must go and do a DNA test.
Yes.
Everyone must know where origin. My DNA, for example, is Eastern Turkish, Western Iraqi, and Algerian. That's my DNA.
Wow, that's interesting, huh?
Yeah, but my family, my mother doesn't believe it. She says, no, we came from Canada. My great-grandmother did.
Algerian, so anyway, that's very exciting. That could mean,
and they find,
yours, just to think about your Algerian, it could mean that you have some Carthaginian in you or something. Who knows? Exactly.
So they found out that their mother is descended from slaves from Mumbai. Oh, yeah? And they're Van Sale, the surname Van Sale. This guy said to me, they're so proud of the fact that they have this bloodline that is so diffused with the globe, with the world. He said to me, but his uncle refuses to believe it. And that 30 years ago, he said if he'd done that, he'd gone to jail. The whole family would have split. But now the whole family of farmers from the Ceres district are proud of their ancestry, that it includes Southeast Asian. And that, for me, that kind of thing swings, where you can make people understand, don't read the book on its cover. That's a fatal mistake that you're making here, my friend. That's I won't mention his name, but I've got a very strong Pan-Africanist. During the 80s, when we were journalists, he would say to me, go back to your country in Europe. Yeah. As a joke, but he was kind of Africanist, Africa for the Africans.
Sure.
Anyway, he did a DNA test to discover that his ancestry is Southern Italian. So,
this happens.
And he visited Italy, and if you look at his face, he actually looks sort of Mediterranean, even though if you take color away, you know what I mean?
Well, they've got this.
They've
got this great show in the US. I think it's called "Who Do You Think You Are?" I think it's also in Britain, where they do exactly this. They trace people's family lines. And, we are on a continent. I'm so glad you've mentioned oral tradition the number of times you have. And really, podcasts are just another kind of oral tradition with technology. But we're also in a country where we talk about our ancestors often. We're proud to know and proud to have a history which may stretch back a couple of 100 years, maybe a couple of decades. But this show is so fascinating because they ask people in America, often very political people, like, oh, who do you think you descend from? And they all think it's fairly straightforward, Oh, my ancestors came on the Mayflower and they landed at Plymouth Rock in 1600s, and I'm a direct descendant of that. And then they find out, no, actually, it's a lot more complicated. And again, human relations can span all kinds of differences over a period of a couple of 100 years, to the point where it's that amazing story about the bones that are found under a tree, and you can't tell who the black man was who was fighting with the white man in some infraction between the two of them during some part of South African history, because the bones look the same once they've been in the soil or been bleached by the sunlight, and nobody can tell who's who.
Yes, all interlinked. That's, I think, an important thing to stress here, is that there's this myth that, we're so mobile now, but if you look throughout human history, it's the story of mobility. From 70,000 years ago, when Cro-Magnon Africans walked into Europe and then Asia and all the way to Australasia, it's mobility. And we've always had that kind of quest. That's why I do think, just to kind of segue, but we will end up on Mars, because humans are natural expedition leaders.
Yeah.
We have that capacity. And because of that, we have blended ourselves repeatedly. It's only at times where people stress about the moment of ethnicity and the culture of the me, and say, this is where I'm rooted. But we are kind of rootless. We are windswept and blown across the globe constantly. And that it doesn't mean you don't have depth. For me, the depth comes with ethic and interrelations. So you don't have to prove that you lived at the same mountainside for 9 million years to show that you have a conservative ethic towards religion or love, or being a good person, or all those things. Actually, I think that nothing stresses you and tests you more than when you're traveling and moving and meeting new people, because you've got to explore yourness, your centralness, as well as being able to include the other into your relationship that you have with people. Understand where you are in Japan or in Mauritius, and understand that you're not of it, but you are. There's part of you in there, and so on. So I think, without being too esoteric about it, that we must all realize we're fundamentally made of the same atoms that have drifted around the cosmos. And if we just see ourselves as red-haired old man of 63 like me, who happens to be white or Caucasian, as they curiously name whites, then you're seriously deluded, as I say again, about the real aspects of us as human beings, which is that we are fated to interrelate.
If we're going to be a little esoteric, and I mean, this is where history becomes almost like mythology, and sometimes you can't really tell the difference, but are there places in South Africa where you feel more connected to history? Are there places that you've visited, perhaps battlefields, perhaps beautiful views, where you try to imagine the events of history unfolding? Because it's very hard for us, and I've always said that my idea of heaven would be a time machine where I could just go back and watch the things that happened and see the details that maybe we would have missed in the recordings that we have from all the sources that we have. But to actually, without interfering in it, be able to observe history would be the most amazing thing. I could spend eternity doing that and I'd never get bored. Are there places in South Africa that you just love visiting for this?
Yes, there's a number. There are a number. I mean, obviously the cradle of humankind, because I've been there, I don't know, dozens of times. Every time a visitor comes overseas, I take them there. The other in Gauteng is Tswaing Crater.
Yes.
Saltpan, which in Hammanskraal. It's when you go in there, you'll find obsidian axes that have been napped from 150,000 years ago by Cro-Magnon humans, modern humans, basically. You'll find their arrow point there on the ground still, obsidian, which is a glass created by huge forces. geological forces. You'll find it on the one side, for example. When you go there and you're walking over these things, they're literally crunching under your feet. It gives you a curious sensation, wouldn't you say? That's just lying around. Then when I go into caves in the southeastern coastline, where people lived 70,000 years ago, where if you were there at the time, say 20,000 years ago, and looked out to sea, you wouldn't see the sea, you'd just see a plain because the sea was 80 kilometers further out. So Mossel Bay, for example, if you stood at Mossel Bay and looked out to sea, you wouldn't see the sea. You would see just land for up to 80 k's out because of the ice age.
Right.
That gives you a curious effect on latency. Those are humans that were looking out over that plain, and now we look out over the sea. So it always, I find the shifting sands feel happens. It happens to me in the Karoo, when you know that the woes, the koi, the san, the xhosa around Graaff-Reinet and those areas where we're all traveling on the landscape. So the landscape for me is the proof of history. I don't really look at buildings and things like that. I feel really that the essence of our history flows through the landscape, through the rivers, and the forests, and so on. So when I'm there, I picture our ancestors of whatever ethnic background were doing the same thing. And it's quite a chilling feeling. I get the chills when I'm walking through a trail that I know has been walked often. I mean, that's from growing up in Nkweleni in KZN and Mhlutuzi Valley. We walked on Zulu trails, which were probably 200-300 years old. They crisscross farms there. The people have the right to walk across the farms because it's ancient Zulu paths. And one of these was through our farm, for example. And walking on that trail, and as a child, and realizing that, a Zulu warrior walked on this trail 150 years ago, was a real feeling of place. So I think there's a whole bunch of others I could mention, but that's for me the start. I don't, as I said to you, because South Africa is so new, we don't have these vast colosseums to relate to. So the colosseums for me are the Drakensberg, the Maluti Mountains, the Cape Fold Belt, the Cape Mountain ranges, which are phenomenal. That for me is the architecture of history, is the land.
I love it. Well, listen, you really are doing a tremendous job with this podcast of yours. Please, long may it continue. And I'm sure that there's no lack of material for you to be able to keep doing this. The History of South Africa with Des Latham, our guest this morning. Pleasure to see you, Des. Thank you.
Gareth, thank you for having me. And Leigh-Ann, thank you so much. And I'm honored to be here.
Well, it's great stuff you're doing. So I'm a fan of all of your work. It's amazing. Thank you very much, Des. And thank you to everybody else. We will see you on Wednesday at 6 a.m. bright and early in the morning. Ass, thank you.
Thank you. See you
I
next
hope you
week.
had a happy day today and that you continue to. Yeah, keep warm. It's going to be chills this week. And winter's here for a long time still. Don't get too comfortable. Ciao.